Welcome back. Now that we have built our own database structure, completed with tables for students, courses, instructors, and enrollments, it's time to insert the actual data into these tables. But wait, we are not going to insert data manually using the pgadmin tool. We are going to do it like real developers using Python. Let's dive in. Remember the database connection module we created earlier? That's exactly what we will be using to connect to our database here, because we don't want to repeat our connection code in every script. Instead, we will import our module and just grab the connection object when needed. Let's start by importing our connection. So we say from DB connect import get connection, and then we can take it into a connection object con equals get connection. So we are ready with the connection now. We can go ahead and insert data into the tables. Let's define a function that will insert records into the students table. Let's call it insert students. Inside the function, we will say con.execute, and we will write the insert statement to insert the student records. Here the statement says insert into students name, email, and we insert the two values for that. The name is John Smith and the email is john@example.com. If you remember, the students table we created with three columns: the student ID, name, and email. But here we are not inserting the student ID. This is because the student ID we have declared it as an auto incremented column. So whenever we insert a record into the students table, PostgreSQL will automatically insert a record into that column, and it will use that value for uniquely identifying the student record. So we don't need to explicitly insert that value from here. Let's examine this execute method. The connection.execute method in Python is used to execute SQL queries or commands against a database. It takes the SQL statement as a string, then sends it to the database for execution, and it returns a result object. We will see in a while what this result object will contain. So the basic functionality of the execute method is to take an SQL command in the form of a string, check for the syntax, and if everything is okay, send it to the database for execution. We are already connected to the database using this connection object, and so this execute method will execute this insert statement and insert the record into the table. And once the record is successfully inserted, we have to save this record. For that, we make use of the commit method, con.commit. We will be learning in detail about this commit method later. But for now, just understand that the commit method is used for saving the record into the table. So after every operation, whether it be an insert or update or delete, we have to commit the change that we are doing into the table. Let's assign the return value of this execute method to a variable. Let me call it result. And once we are done with the execution and the data is saved into the table, we have to close the connection. So let me say con.close. The close method is used to close the connection. It's a good practice to close the database connection as soon as they are no longer needed. Failing to close connections might result in errors or unexpected behavior and subsequent database operations, especially in long-running applications or scripts. So all done, ready to insert. Let's run this function and then call it. So let's say insert students. So we call this function and it is successfully executed. But how do we know that it got successfully executed? Let's go to the pgadmin and find out whether this row got inserted into the students table. So we are in pgadmin. Make sure that the server is up and running, and go inside that. Go to the schemas under the student DB. Right click and click the query tool. Let us run the query to get the values from the students table. So we say select star from students. Let's run this, and we can see one record in the students table. We can see the name and email that we inserted from the Python program, John Smith and john@example.com. And also along with that, we can see the student ID and enrolled date. Student ID is 1 and the enrolled date is the current date. As I said, the student ID is auto-generated by the database itself, and it starts from 1. And when we insert the next record, it will assign the value 2 to it. And the enrolled date, if we don't specify a date, by default it takes the current date. So we have successfully inserted one record into the table. Let's insert another student record. We will change this name. we say the student name is Rahul Sen, and we will have the email ID rsen@example.com. So let's define this function, run it again, and we got it executed. So let's go to the pgadmin and run this select statement one more time, and this time we can see 2 records in the table. There is one major problem with this code. The hackers can hack your code in the runtime and change these values. So you intend to insert Rahul Sen, but it may be inserting a different value because the hackers would have passed a different value at the runtime. This is what we call as the SQL injection. To avoid this issue, we use the placeholders instead of having the names hard-coded. So here we say %s and another %s here. So these placeholders will be filled with the values at the runtime, so nobody can hack it. And this kind of query which contains placeholders is what we call as the parameterized query. How to pass values to these placeholders? Now this execute method, we can pass a second parameter and we can pass these values as a tuple. The first placeholder will take the name and the second placeholder will take the email. A small correction here. The placeholders should not be placed within quotes. So let's run this function and then call it. And this time it has executed. So let's go to the pgadmin and check for this value. Once again, run the select statement, and this time we can see 3 records. But this time the third record we have inserted with the parameterized query. This is the best and safer way to insert records into the table. But in all these cases, we were inserting 1 record at a time. But what if you have a bulk of students to be inserted? Say for example, you have 100 students or 1000 students to be inserted at the same time. Will you be inserting one by one? Python gives you a different method to insert records in bulk. That's what we are going to see next. Here we have got a list of 3 students. Each list element is a tuple with the student name and the email ID. Let's say we want to insert these students into the students table. Let's modify our function a bit to handle this students list. So here we will pass a parameter students list. And this students list, so we can pass it here as the second parameter. We are all set except one thing. Here we are using the execute method. This method is used for inserting 1 record at a time. Here we are trying to insert more than 1 record. So this method cannot be used. So Python gives another method named execute many. The execute many is not directly available with the connection object. It is available with the cursor object. The cursor is a database control object used to execute SQL commands and get the results. It acts like a channel between your Python code and the database. So we need to say con.cursor.execute many. The function is modified, so let's redefine it. And this time we will call the insert students. But while calling, we have to pass the student list. Insert students of students. Let's run it. The execution is successful. Now we can go to the pgadmin and make sure that the 3 records are inserted into the students table. So let's run this query. Select star from students. And this time you can see the 3 records getting inserted. In this lecture, we have learned how to insert data into our PostgreSQL tables directly from the Python using the PsychoPG library. We explored how to reuse our connection module, insert single or multiple records safely using the parameterized queries, and understood the role of the cursor in executing SQL commands. With this, we are now ready to populate tables and start building dynamic database-driven Python applications. In the next lecture, we will insert records into the other tables also. I hope you have enjoyed this tutorial. I would love to hear from you, your thought on this tutorial. Please leave your comments at the bottom. Please subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon. Thank you for watching and see you again soon.